Hello, and welcome to Change the Face of Yoga, teaching toddlers through golden oldies. I'm very excited to be talking to lots of yoga teachers who will explain their passion for teaching yoga to students with different ages, physical fitness levels, wellness levels, and different goals. They will explain the benefits of yoga for these students and will be including teacher tips and pose modifications. I am Stephanie Cunningham of Yoga Lightness, and I've been teaching over 50s for 10 years. So this area is my passion and the passion of many other yoga teachers that you will be listening to in this series. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get started. This is episode 53 of Changing the Face of Yoga, and this is the second part of the interview with Diana Tokaji. And this part of the interview, we talk about self-care when you or your student is in trauma. Let's listen. And now I'd like to segue, because you're a very creative person. You're a writer, you're a choreographer, you have written books, poetry, but you directed a performance of the essences of the book. And so I'd like to kind of work around to, did you feel that writing this book of 6 women in a cell in some way helped the trauma, or was it more to get that information out to assist other similar trauma?
There's a smaller book, a quicker read maybe, that would be sort of for us, for yoga therapists or for survivors of trauma or assault, that's more not a how-to, but a little bit more that direction. This book is not that, because it's a narrative, okay, because it's true, and it's in writing. There's a phrase that's wonderful. That's show, don't tell. So I could tell you, for example, how to work with me after an assault. But this book does the showing by telling you my story through the stories of the women I was in jail with. And in showing rather than a more didactic telling, your body gets to come with me, with sparingly, because I don't literally bring you, into some of the bad news, but you know how it is when you get engrossed in a book, and then you look up from the book and whoa, you've been in another world. So we start to share a symbiotic thing that's happening, and that experience, I think, is so valuable because we are empathetic and body and tactile people. So when you speak on a sensory level rather than a do this, do that level, then you, Stephanie, take it into your body and apply it through you, honestly, instead of through me telling you ways to do something. So it's much more the real story of what it takes to survive something, like really what it takes. And in so doing, I think it's for any survivor. We're all survivors of some versions of trauma, and anybody who works with other people. And also in terms of a national crisis of people actually being harmed by each other and also by police, it shares with people what it's like when you're not killed, which is, of course, the most dramatic pinnacle moment that causes us all in society to uprise more. But what about those who are not killed, who do survive? And my fight for mental and physical health is something that I felt was really important to share, because I don't think anybody knew just what it took.
Have you been dealing with this for some time? Did this happen when you were younger, or is this more of a more recent, and you're using your yoga therapy to assist you and other survivors?
This happened 3 years ago, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
well enough to be able to do an interview like this. It
Mm-hmm.
is making me shake, but I'll be okay. I can rebalance pretty easily, and that time frame is important. I think. I think it's no coincidence that I'm sort of speaking out a little more publicly. But I wrote the self case report 2 years ago when it and all these processes, all the writing, the choreographing, the working with clients are not without a lot of discomfort, emotional discharge, a lot of processing, a lot of self care. I did a tremendous amount of sobbing and all that sort of thing, writing the book, choreographing it. And every client I work with, I make sure that I have means for my emotional rebalancing and release. Because what we work with, whether it's illness or just distress or scoliosis, whatever it is, it's pretty immediate to our psyches and our bodies, and we deserve to clear ourselves and care for ourselves.
Having gone through this, you found, and probably had it before, but the real need for self care. And I I'm not going through anything like you did. I don't even want to, and try to make those the same thing at all. I just say I'm really suffering from burnout,
Mhm.
and I was wondering what kinds of self care things are helpful to you, and they may or may not be helpful to me. Like I said, because we're coming
Yeah,
from very, very different places,
yeah,
but I'm always on the lookout for them.
yeah. I think you've hit it on the nail. I mean, what restores each of us is going to be personal to what feeds us, what we love. For one person, it might be quietly sitting there and dicing a ridiculous amount of vegetables and making something with that. For somebody else, it's going to be walking near water or swimming in water. Somebody else, it's going to be using their leg muscles to climb a mountain. Somebody else, it's going to be having a really good ear or a yoga therapist session or hands-on work of some sort to their immediate body, to their skin, to their muscles, where it feels like somebody is really with them physically. And I think, and then for there are any number of artistic forms, of course. It might be singing at the top of your lungs. For me, in that first year, one of the things that I did for about 2 months was was like, screw yoga, I'm boxing. And that was so real. That was so right to do, to be smacking up against something and using that contact and the rhythm and the demand of boxing, which is skill. So you have to use your brain. That was really important. And dancing, moving, sharing, there's just art, painting, writing. There's so many, many ways. One of the greatest supports for me that constantly puzzles me that we don't have within yoga therapy is something called RC, reevaluation counseling, or co-counseling, or peer counseling, where you just become trained in being present, quality listener to another person and to certain feedback techniques that many of which cross over with Phoenix Rising Yoga Therapy, which is one of my certifications. to me, as yoga therapists, we should all be trained in both of these modalities, because we should be able to pick up the phone and give each other 10-minute mini sessions in this kind of listening. But all those
Okay.
are ways to regroup and restore. Not to mention our practices, right? But
True.
really not our idea of what our practice was last month when we were feeling invigorated, but really what our body is calling for now. That's the restoration. Whether it's a sweaty practice or it's the quietest practice that you've ever seen that barely looks like a practice.
I've noticed that throughout this interview, you've brought that point up again and again of really paying attention, being present to understand what the body is asking for or is trying to do. Do you think that this is an offshoot of your long career as a dancer and a choreographer? Or is it more the embodiment concepts of yoga, or possibly both? But I've noticed there's really a very strong theme there that you often come back to what the body needs and what the body is trying to tell you.
That you're hearing a repeated theme about presence. Is that right?
Yes.
I just keep learning from other moments in life with other people more and more about what it really takes to be present, and how well received that is by any individual. It's just the best gift you can give anybody. And I was recently on the receiving end of a Phoenix Rising session when I was assisting in where was it? In Massachusetts, and asked another Phoenix Rising practitioner for a session while I was there. And Esquera was her name. And gosh, I learned so much from her presence, even though I already thought that one of my gifts was presence. She took it that much farther to noticing my eyes wandering in a particular direction over and over, and that afterwards, after my eyes would wander, I would sigh in a defeated way. And I could go into just what, I mean, we could spend the whole rest of the interview, so I'll try to edit, but it's difficult because it was so profound for me. She observed me doing that and asked me about it. But of course, I hadn't observed myself doing it. And it was the most profound observation, because what was happening for me was there was nobody in my field who knew what had happened to me, really. And so sitting in front of another yoga therapist, finally, who was really listening, I kept envisioning these different scenes of my assault, different moments like over that evening. And every time I saw one of those scenes, I would sigh defeatedly, because I knew nobody really wanted to hear it, and nobody really could ever understand what I'd been through. So when she captured that defeat, it opened the door for me to actually pluck those scenes out of the air and speak them to her. We pretty much never moved from our seated position there. And she was weeping through the whole session, and I was weeping through the whole session, and couldn't stop talking. Once I started this dam of information that had been impossible to describe to anybody other than through writing my book, broke. And finally, somebody was with me as I was seeing my own scenes. Somebody was in my company, in a sense, holding space for me while my scenes were replaying. That absence of isolation, whether it's how you're feeling about chemotherapy or how you're feeling about your dog dying or how you feel defeated because of your back pain, is just invaluable to freeing that being to their own healing process.
Thank you. That
Yeah.
was very profound. And it does show how much we need other people just to be present with us for whatever reason, but to be deeply present with us. And I really want to thank you, Diana. I would like to talk a little bit about more of the logistics of your book, which is, you say that you've written it and it still has, I think, the editing process, but it has gotten very good pre-reviews. So you have every intention of taking it forward.
The book is written and the editing is finished. I have a few edits to put in, but it's really done, which is itself a miracle. Yeah. And then the next step is to present it to agents and potential publishers. So that's a world that I have not walked, but I feel supported in doing it, having received really positive feedback from the editor that I found. So anyway, it's ready for that. I just had to immerse myself in the show and had to turn my back from the book for a minute. So in a week or so, it should be ready for that step. And then I've got some great videographers who are working on editing the footage of the show into like a music video length, 2-minute, and also a full length of the show, so that I hopefully can be able to share that with people who can't see it live, maybe even share it with workshop participants, for example, so they can have the visceral experience. The show had a combination of video, spoken word, recorded word, beautiful music, dancing in silks in the air, in all positions, in a chair, over a chair, under a chair, etc., and actually choreography, of a more normal, both in gesture and in movement, with me and with another person. So that recorded version will give me some stretchability. And then hopefully when the book comes out, we'll maybe launch that by another performance, or this time a round of them, so more people can come. But there are other pieces of writing in the works. I haven't even spoken to Anne, the woman I mentioned, but it occurred to me just yesterday that she and I should really write a short piece to share with our own colleagues about this moment of a session, just to capture a session, or for me to capture some of the assault survivors that I've worked with, anonymously, of course, but there are other pieces in the works that I need to turn my head to soon. The performance was actually sort of a carrot for the GoFundMe. So the performance became like the benefit production. And then for people who don't live nearby, hopefully the video would be a gift for them. And also a chapter excerpt is something that I will be, I haven't done it yet because the performance was just 2 days ago, but which I will send them as their gift. The whole thing was created to be a benefit to support the writing of the book and the bringing the book to the next stage, the publication stage, whether that ends up being through a formal publisher or through Politics and Prose, their Opus publishing means, which is a self-publishing process, whichever one that is. Either way, I was broke. And we had rented our house to go into retreat last summer for me to write my book. And my husband is simultaneously writing a book on a totally different topic. So I kind of lived on that for a while, but I needed some support and I got it. And I was incredibly grateful the way people seemed to rise to that with huge hearts. It was really an act of love is what it felt like.
That's wonderful. Do you happen to have how people can donate?
The GoFundMe page, it's really GoFundMe and my name, and then you find it. So my name is spelled like Tokaji.
Okay.
And my first name is Diana. So if they go to GoFundMe, which is one word, GoFundMe, and they do my name, then there it is, boom. And they can read a little about it and see a little visual. Soon I'll have...
Is there anything that you would like to add to the interview before we wind up?
I would. I want to add something about the physical in our field and the use of mudras. So valuable for all aspects of mental and physical health, I think. Not at all woo-woo, very real. And people who haven't done yoga, I've found, respond to it. I did write about a couple of mudra in my article, but, getting physical in ways that the hands interweave or pull upon each other or press or touch one's own body can also create some of what we were talking about earlier, that firming toward the midline. And in that process, the being starts to register the courage that you alluded to before, that's so necessary to proceed in life. So from that physical, that tactile, like Ganesha mudra, that pulling of the interwoven fingers into each other creates a literal sensation almost of the bandhas in the body, which creates a sense of tone, which then translates to the mental and the emotion body of having rallying potential, where it felt like the body was just weakened and couldn't pull together. So that and the physical practices, it's definitely not all art and spirit and expressing oneself. It's definitely, ground and the practices that let us know we're here and we belong here.
Excellent. All right. So I'm going to give some contact details, and I also want to again talk about Diana's article in Yoga Journal. Is it Yoga Journal? Yoga Therapy Today. And it's the most recent, the winter edition.
Yeah.
And she talks about a lot of these things, and she talked about a couple of mudras, she said. And so you could get some information that way, or you can go to her email address. And this is one word, dianatokaji@gmail.com. And she has a Facebook page, which is, I didn't say your last name right, but I think it's Diana Tokaji.
I apologize that I'm not that easily found. I've only been on Facebook for a short time. I was sort of the joke in my graduate program, yoga therapy graduate program, because everybody was on Facebook except me. But I am trying to come into this century.
Okay.
So be patient with me, and I'll reply
Okay.
to emails if or a
All
Facebook
right,
message.
both of those.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got you that far. That's good. Diana, thank you so much for the interview. I think it was kind of miraculous almost in a way, the way that you shared and the themes that you've presented to us. I have benefited greatly. I'm absolutely positive that my listeners will also benefit. So thank you so much for your sharing and your sensitivity.
Your questions have been right on the mark, and thank you very much for your transparency and the direction that you took things. Wonderful. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for your work.
It's very satisfying, especially when I get to interview people
Yay.
like you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful interview. If you would like to be a guest on Changing the Face of Yoga, please go to my website, www.yogalightness.com.au, and under the Changing the Face of Yoga tab, you can complete Be Our Guest form. After reviewing the form and finding it applicable to this podcast, we will send you a link to schedule an interview. Please download, review, and tell your friends of any podcasts that are of interest to you and to them. If you would like to contact me, send an email to info@yogalightness.com.au. And thank you for listening to Changing the Face of Yoga.